Welcome, welcome, welcome. So, Mr. Fenwick,
Yes,
how
sir.
are you?
Me, I'm always doing good. It's always a great day.
You good?
Great.
You know, it takes no effort to be good, right?
I did not know that, but now I'm great. Now that I know that, I'm great.
So you just wake up. You're supposed to wake up good.
That's what
That's
they
it.
say. Aren't are we supposed to first introduce ourselves to these
No,
people?
not really. Don't worry about introducing yourself. We'll get to that part.
Okay, I meant you.
So,
They may not know who you are.
all right. So, this.
We're doing this for posterity, like, hey, the people might get it, they're a new agent.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Emerick Peace, and I am the operating partner of Keller Williams Preferred Properties. And you're here today to have a conversation with Emerick. And my guest today is Jason Fenwick. Jason is the business advisor for Winders, Wyeth and Ward. Jason is a phenomenal business analyst. I've done business with Jason for the past 20 years, and I'm telling you, I wouldn't do a deal without Jason. Jason is just phenomenal. Just the only word I can say to you today, phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
So, with that being said,
And I'm your
Jason,
partner.
yeah, no, well, we Windsor Wyatt and Ward today. We Windsor Wyatt today.
Windsor Wyeth today. Okay,
Yeah, we
I
Windsor Wyatt today.
have that hat on. Okay.
Yeah, we're business analysts today.
I got it. I got to drink my whiskey before we get into it.
Oh my gracious, your whiskey. Okay.
I don't drink for anyone who's paying attention.
No, I don't either. So that's it.
We're teetotalers. So we're going to have a good time then. We're going to have fun.
Oh yeah. This is and that's the whole point of this conversation. The whole point of this conversation is just to let our head down, relax a little bit. Not no pun intended, let our head down. Um, and relax and just have a great conversation because like really what drew this conversation out was um I was I was reading a quote and it said, growth is painful, change is painful, and what how did it go? Growth is painful, change is painful. There's nothing more painful than being stuck somewhere you don't belong, right? And
Yeah.
in business, when we start having that conversation about being stuck, sometimes people misinterpret this whole conversation about being stuck. Really, when we talk about being stuck in business, it means that your business is stagnant. You're not growing the way you could be growing. You're not doing the things that you ultimately could and should be doing. And the challenge with most of us is that sometimes we 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 mistake movement for progress, right? We think because we moving, we going someplace, and really we running in place. And then in other areas, uh, we're just doing better than the people who we know, so we believe that we're doing great. And then in some places, we just can't figure out how to get it going at all. And you and I, we were talking this morning, and we were talking about some things about just success and how to get unstuck, and then just how do you get to where you are in life. And then you made a joke. You comment on the fact that a lot of times I joke about you and your background, and then you just wonder about my background and say, okay, how the hell did that happen? And in that place of growth and change, change is inevitable, growth is an option. And so we have to make that concerted effort to grow. We have to make that concerted effort to be a little more successful. We have to make that concerted effort to be a cut above everybody else. And that's great. The truth is that only lasts for a certain amount of time. Change is coming. And it's just a matter of are we ready for change? And in my dialogue about this year, Conquer 2021. Conquer 2021 for me is really about the inevitable. Because what happened in 2020 was, you couldn't plan for that. You couldn't even make that up exactly what happened. And so, and not having the ability to plan for 2020, understanding what 2020 represented, understanding what 2020 took us, and now we go to 2021, and there is absolutely no way if you're in business you can say I am planning for 2021, and based on my past 4 years of history, this is probably going to happen to me in 2021. What do you think about that conversation?
I think you choose. I think regardless of the situation, you choose what you want to happen.
Yes.
There's an old Evictus is an old poem that says, "I am the master of my fate." And so one of the things that piggybacks off what we were talking about this morning is, like I said, you always talk about the conversations you think happened at my kitchen table, and we were talking about the ones that happened at yours. But let's just all stop for a minute. If you're on this phone call, at some point in time, you've been Emerick Peace. So you might have had a job, and most people don't know Emerick's background. If they don't know it, he was retired from the Air Force, 20-year veteran, but you were in real estate for about, what, 8 or 10 of those years, right?
Nope, 11 years and 8 months. It wasn't like I was counting, though, but it was
11 years and 8 months he was in real estate.
Absolutely.
He retired. But what if he had just made the decision, hey, I'm good. I did serve my country. I did my time. I think I'll stop there. I think I'm not even going to look for another opportunity to grow and grow my wealth and grow my influence. But what if he had said, oh, I'm just going to be a real estate agent. That's it. I'm just going to do that. He wouldn't have had the opportunity. He didn't stop there. He chose to look for additional opportunity in terms of becoming a broker. And for those of you who don't know, I mean, before KWPP, there were like maybe 5 African-American brokerages in Prince George's County, and none of them like 8 people. That's in the history of the entire county. And so all the brokers you see today, they kind of looked at us and said, oh, it can be done, and you know, forged a path. But what if Emerick had just stayed at, I'm just going to be a retiree? I think we have someone we got to mute, Emerick. What if he had just stated, I'm just going to be an Air Force, you know, retiree? What would have happened then? And what if he had said, oh, I'm just going to stay at being an agent? What would have happened then? And nobody had heard of Keller Williams east of the Mississippi. So he had to find that. He found that opportunity. But what if he just said, I just want a small brokerage. I don't want to change the world. Where I'm getting at is we each have the ability at each point in time in our life to choose our destiny and to choose greatness and to choose something bigger and to choose. No one would have known if he had stopped just after he retired from being an airman. Nobody would have known if he had just stopped at a real estate agent what he could do. But at each point in time, you choose greatness. You choose, as Emerick would say, to be phenomenal. And you got to have a big dream, and you got to understand and be authentic with yourself from where you came from, and you know everyone's ability to change the world and impact things. And so that's really, for me, what this story is about. Like I said, I talk about my background, but you always talk about it. But I want to know, how does a kid, I wish we had that picture of you when you were like 2 years old that you posted a little, or mom posted a little while. How does a kid from West Baltimore, who at age 17 or 18 joins the military, sees a little bit of the world, comes back, begins a real estate career. He works all night, a night shift in the Air Force, and then sells real estate during the day, becomes a top producer, Hall of Famer, ends up opening up a brokerage, becomes a millionaire, and buys the block. How's that? You know, it literally buys the, you know, and you end up owning the building. All of this, where does all that come from? From humble means in West Baltimore. And so today's topic, from my standpoint, and I know Emerick's going to lead us, is using your story to empower you, regardless of what your story is. What we tell ourselves, everyone expects it to be a Bill Gates or, you know, Warren Buffett's story, but even their stories are humble in the beginning. And from humble beginnings come, you know, great outcomes. So how does this mighty oak that we now know today as Emerick Peace, with the fancy handkerchief and the beautiful purple, beautiful tailored jacket, how does he get from there, from that little kid on playing Scully, in West Baltimore.
You don't know nothing about that. You
I don't know
nothing.
nothing about that. Emerick told me about this game called Scully with the caps. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? He's like, he introduced me to it. He still has never played the game with me.
You don't know nothing about that.
I gotta give it to you. We're walking along, me and Emerick, and he looks down and he picks up this bottle cap. Says, "Oh, this would make a great Scully cap." And I'm like, we're just walking randomly somewhere, and I'm like, "What is a Scully cap?" He's picking up this dirty bottle cap, and he tells me this game about Scully where like you put liquid wax or something in it.
Wax in the top. You put asphalt in the top.
How does this big-headed kid? I think Emerick's the only person who has a head bigger than mine. We're like number 1 and number 2 in the world in size of circumference of head. How does he go from West Baltimore, playing Scully, to millionaire business owner, owning the block and other interest? That to me is the true story, because inside Emerick Peace is every other person at Keller Williams Preferred Property. They're at just some different phase of it. Maybe you just started as a real estate agent and you don't know what you're doing in terms of how it can change your family. Maybe you're in the Air Force or working for the government or working a job and you're trying to juggle 2 things. And he's also a father of 2 with his beautiful wife, Robin. Maybe you dream of owning the building and owning the business and having 600 people work with you, and helping the community in multiple ways. Wherever you're at in that timeline, you are Emerick Peace. It's just a matter of what time, what day you are. And I think that's the beauty of America, and that's the beauty of this story. And that's the story that people don't know.
Yeah,
that's my own opinion.
Right. And so in our conversation, we're gonna go through all of those things. And it's one thing that, and I'm gonna come back to what you asked me. What you asked me was, how, and to be real honest with you, at first I didn't understand how. I started to look for that how I ended up being me, because I had to evaluate all the things that were going on in my life. And one day I was riding with my brother. We were riding in the car, and I said, man, I got this issue. And it's just, sometimes I just wonder, why me? And then he looked at me and said, why not you? And I couldn't answer the question. And so we having this dialogue, and this is real dialogue. And then he could proceed on to ask me, he said, well, you know what? You say, why you? Let me ask you another question. Why you never use drugs? And I looked back at him and I said, why do you use drugs? And he couldn't answer that question. And when he couldn't answer that question, that's when he knew he was sick and tired of being sick and tired, and he had to get straight. My point behind that is that I spent a lot of time just thinking about that. Why me? I couldn't figure it out, because if you look around everything around me and everything that I grew up in and how I grew up, it didn't equate to the life I was living.
So tell them how you grew up. And this is the beauty of America. I always say that we're at different ends of the same
Dusty
spectrum.
Roads, woo, the American dream.
That's what I nicknamed for Emerick, Dusty Roads, the American dream. If you're looking for somebody, you read about it in the magazines. If you're looking for someone who embodies the American dream in the sense of, what everyone says, pull yourself up by the bootstraps, in one generation, make a quantum leap forward for your family and your community and impact of the community. That's Emerick. And then also your skill will make places for you before kings and other places and other people. And this isn't to toot Emerick's horn. This is to showcase that no matter what your background is, that you can end up wherever you want to be. It's just the decisions you make, the counsel you take, and always moving. So take us back to, what's the address?
2306 Calverton Heights Avenue.
There you go. Take us back there and walk us through elementary, high school, wherever, this path. Because at each point, what we're really here to talk about is getting stuck. We're not here to count Emerick. We're just using him as an example. At each point, he could have stopped. And at each point, there was a decision to go left, just like you were talking to your brothers. He decided to do drugs. You decided not to.
Right.
That's the same decision. Two men, same household, two different decisions. Take us back to the little boy playing Scully. And tell these people what Scully is. Maybe they don't know. Maybe it might be in the chat.
Somebody might know. Roderick might know. He from Philly. He might know.
Okay.
So here's what happened. And let me I got to start from the beginning, because in the beginning, like, my mother had a small convenience store. We moved here from Petersburg, Virginia. And my mother, she had a small convenience store. And she worked the convenience store. As my brothers got older, got to be teenagers, she understood that she could not run a convenience store and have teenagers and be able to have benefits and do everything she had to do. So she got rid of the convenience. She got rid of the convenience store, and
so she owned the convenience store.
Let me tell you, I'm not sure how this happened.
Okay,
Remember,
one of those.
She's a single mother with 4 kids, and she found a way to buy the building with whatever savings she had. What she figured was that the money that she was paying rent to somebody else, she could pay a mortgage and own a building. Now, let me tell you, back in the day, it was 4 of us in a 2-bedroom apartment. It was above the store. So what she did was, she was smart enough to know, I'm already paying rent, so I can pay rent in this building, have a store, and live upstairs. It's 2 bedrooms. My sons can sleep in one room. I can sleep in another room. We can run the store. But as my brothers, that was a great.
I got to pause you there, because as you're telling your story, I want to jump in to make the point. So for those of you who are single mothers and you're wondering how you can inspire your young son or your young daughter, here's what I know. When we bought the building, Emerick had 2 seminal moments that he told me about. One was after the closing, he went to the building I think it was late at night, and he just looked at it and walked in and walked through the whole building, which is 50,000 square feet, and said, I own the building. And the second time was, he brought his mother to see the seed she had planted 30, 40, 50 years earlier, to see what the tree and the fruit look like. So if you're wondering how you can impact your family and your future and the wealth of your family, you don't have to be Emerick. You could be Mrs. Peace, who plants the seed in a little boy's mind that he can be great, that he can do these things, that he deserves to own the building, that it's there waiting for him. So I just want to interject at different points so I can tell what the point of the story is. Proceed, my friend.
Okay, and so it was 4 of us. It was a 2-bedroom, and 4 of us. We had bunk beds on one side, and then 2 small beds on the other side. And the room was big enough.
And you're the smallest of them. I want everybody to understand, Emerick ain't the big boy. He's the baby of the bunch. He's the littlest. So there's 4 big boys,
right,
in this room.
We didn't have a living room. We had a kitchen. We had 1 bathroom. And as we grew bigger, that was a novel idea the first couple of years. And then as my brothers got to be teenagers and everybody was growing, it's like, this is not manageable. And the store was not manageable with teenagers and running store hours, being a single mom. And so what happened is she rented that building and bought a house up the street.
So she became a landlord. She used the first.
No. Let me go back. This is crazy. I didn't even think about this. That was her second property.
How much did your mother make? I think this is important.
I don't even know.
Everybody hears my story and they think affluence. It's easy with affluence. How much did your mother make like per hour at her house?
I don't know. I can't tell you what it was then, but what I can tell you is that my mother has never made more than $8 an hour in her life.
That's my point. $8 an hour. So when you're hearing this, you're not hearing someone who was born with the last name Rockefeller. You're hearing everyday people making a way to build wealth and to build opportunity.
And so what happened, this was her second bill, because we had a house in Virginia, and she was like she wasn't like the most skilled person. She just, instead of paying rent, she always said, I can buy. So back then, a mortgage was like $75, $80, $75, $80 a month. That was a mortgage. You think about that for a second. That's crazy. And so what she did was when we got too big, so she moved to the other house, which was on Calverton Heights, which was totally different because in the neighborhood where the store was, this is how, if you know anything about Baltimore, any inner city, Roderick, I know you know, in Philadelphia, the measure of your wealth is whether you have a front yard or not. If you don't have no grass in the front, you know you broke. Yeah, if you got marble steps, you know you broke. And that sounds crazy today because if you have marble steps today, you got money. Back then, if you had marble steps, you were broke. But you know, just concrete. Wow. We didn't have a front yard, so when we moved to that house on Calverton Heights, all of our friends from the old neighborhood, they thought we were rich. They thought we were moving up. We had a front porch, a real front porch, and we had grass. So we had moved up. We were big time. And so, however, my mother raising 4 boys, I had to think about this and I had to process this all kinds of ways because no matter what happened, she figured out a way to make it work. And like I said, all of our friends thought we were rich. How you rich with 4 scrapping boys? You work in a factory, in a curtain rod factory. Wrap your brain around that. You work in a curtain rod factory. You got 4 boys. Nobody else supporting the household. You ain't living half the hog. You just figuring out a way to make things work differently than everybody else.
So what I hear you saying in telling the story, so the first thing is, remember, we started this with everything. If you're looking to get unstuck, if you're looking to move to the next level, the first thing is, it isn't your circumstances that matter, because everybody at some point in time is going to have rain, negative things, whether you inherit them or they just happen. It's right. The decisions you make in the storm, and it's the thinking that you have. Your mother always had an ownership mindset. That's what we call it on the other side. Right. We need to own something, whether it's just a little patch of land, a little bit of grass, right, a little bit of steps, the little store. It's better to own than to be subject to someone else. And so that's something everybody on the call can put in their head, from Mrs. Peace, Mrs. Yvonne Peace. Hey, we got to own. We got to make better decisions. We got to make the best decision we can make for where we are at, with the objective of building wealth and owning and getting our family to move forward. Go ahead, sir. So we got a little piece of grass and some marble steps, and you big time like
no, we don't have marble steps no more. We had concrete steps.
Oh, yeah, concrete steps.
We had concrete steps, grass, and a true front porch. And you know, to bring that a little differently, when you talk about that whole storm thing, you either coming in a storm or you coming out of a storm. That's just life. That's and so life. What the things that she did was like crazy. When I think about this, right? I want you, so you're figuring out how to make life better. And when you don't have a lot of money, most people spend less money because they have less money. And so in our household, some of y'all might know about this, we had a 50-pound bag of potatoes. With 4 scrapping boys, you had to always have something to eat. So most people who come from less, they would buy a 10-pound bag of potatoes, because a 10-pound bag of potatoes cost less money because you had less money. It took me until I was in my 40s to figure out my mother bought the 50-pound bag of potatoes because the 50-pound bag of potatoes was $20 and the 10-pound bag of potatoes was $8. If you bought 5 8-pound bags of potatoes, you would spend $40. If you spent one 40-pound bag of potatoes, you would spend $20. So you would spend half as much buying twice as many potatoes, even though you had to spend more money. And so in that space, what I start beginning to understand is the creativity of how to make life happen and how to do things at a different level that other people can't do. The other thing that she did was a dozen of eggs. You know, you might think of a dozen eggs, you go to the store, buy a dozen of eggs. And the way that she thought out of the box, she said, well, I'm buying a dozen of eggs and I'm feeding 4 boys. And these jokers eat a dozen of eggs a day. So that's not working. So what she did was she started going to the farm to buy eggs. So
But you
she would buy,
tell the story. She skipped. She said, "Hey, where's the grocery store get their eggs? Why
yeah,
pay the middle?"
exactly. Yeah. They got to be getting them from somewhere. So she went to she figured out where they were getting their eggs from. So she found the farm and she started going to the farm. And I never forget it because we used to go, the eggs used to come in a 30 dozen case. So
30
she would go
dozen.
out, yeah,
30 dozen?
30 dozen of eggs come in one case. So she would buy 30 dozen of eggs in a case. She would buy 2 cases actually. And what she would do is one case would go to our house. This is crazy. And the other case, she would sell to her friends. And they called her the egg lady. And people that she knew, she would call her the egg lady because she knew that a dozen of eggs at the store, and I can't remember what the number was. Think about this. A dozen of eggs at the store costs $1. She would go to the farm and buy 30 dozen of eggs for $15. So she would, even though she didn't have much money, she would take the money that she had, buy more eggs. She did that way. She didn't have to spend more money on eggs, and then sell the surplus of the eggs to other people for $1. So she was still making her money on top of that. And so you just look at all these little creative ways of how to think outside the box to provide for your family.
She was investment minded. So I want to make the point for everyone
Right.
listening that when you hear the story of Mrs. Peace, she started with, why pay rent when I can own? That's investment minded. That's a decision. It wasn't like they came from a lot of wealth. You don't need to have wealth to be investment minded. The second thing was when she started looking at the eggs and the potatoes and going straight to the farmer, she was thinking outside the box, not accepting what people give us. One of the issues we have in our community is all too often we accept what society gives us versus saying, no, I'm going to get exactly what I want and create the opportunity. But she did a little bit of work and had an investment mindset. And that's what made the difference in terms of, we don't want to oversimplify and just make it sound like, oh, well, Mrs. Peace was, this or that. There are a lot of good things, good nuggets in this story. Go ahead, sir.
So it's things like that, like for real. I say this, I think the only name brand thing we ever had in our house was Crisco. She was hell bent on buying Crisco and K-Ro syrup. They were the only 2 things that had names on it, right? Everything else had a different name on it. And then, and it was crazy because I would be like, every now and then we would get cereal with the name of, we had puffed wheat. Y'all, some of y'all know about that. We didn't have sugar pops. We had puffed wheat, right? Other people had frosted flakes. They had Kellogg's frosted flakes. We had flakes of frosted, whatever it was. It was something else. And all of our cereal came in a bag.
Well, clearly you didn't miss a meal.
Oh, no, we didn't miss a meal. And we ate well. We ate well. We didn't miss meals. And we didn't waste food either.
Okay. So your mother always had a investment mindset. She always had there's a way. I just have to be a little creative and I got to think it through.
Absolutely.
Have you ever asked her, hey, Ma, where'd you get this? Like what made you even do that when everyone else is just walking a block down to the corner store, and just getting the eggs and the potatoes there?
Well, here's the difference though. Remember, for those 3 years, she did have that corner store. So she understood what the corner store represented.
What made her get the corner store? She does not, is the corner, did your family own grocery stores, corner stores?
Hell no.
I already knew that, but for the benefit of the, for the benefit of the audience.
The people who were in the country, I don't even think they didn't even own half their land. Most of them were tenant farmers or renters. There was a couple of them that owned their land. And so, no, she didn't come from it. But what she did, we had a conversation recently, probably about a month ago. And we had a conversation about her and her life. And what she said to me, she said, I watched my family and I knew I wanted to do something different with my life than my family because I saw the way their lives turned out. And that was like profound. And like she said, when I was a little girl, most of all the people in my house pretty much smoked. You know, my dad, my granddad, everybody smoked. She said, I'll never smoke. The other thing she said, I won't drink. And the other thing she said, I ain't taking no stuff off of nobody, because she took stuff off my dad. And so one of the things, and so with that being said, she always said, I will find a way to make it work. And my mother's like one of these crazy, and I had to look back, and when I kept saying why me, I had to look back at just how do you overcome adversity. And I looked at that whole situation surrounding her and everything surrounding her. And if I had to do a playback in my life, what I learned, what I understood was that I learned from the lessons that she taught. And she didn't know she was teaching lessons. We were just living a life, and she was teaching lessons the entire time. And then inside that lesson, one of the other things is that my brothers, they never got the lesson. They got the lesson, however, they didn't get the lesson.
Okay.
And they got the lesson. They were the nicest people they are the nicest people you'd ever want to meet, right? Like my other brother, and we laugh about this. He would go and he would steal anything he wanted to steal, including stealing the TV while a guy was asleep watching it. While the guy fell asleep watching TV, he went in his basement, unplugged the TV, stole the TV while the guy was asleep in the basement. And the guy never woke. It's the craziest stuff.
Wow.
But see, here's the thing though. When my neighbor, Mrs. Shorter, would come home with her bags and she got off the bus, he would meet her at the corner and carry her bags up to her house because he didn't want her to carry her bags. So the gratefulness, the humility, the helpful part, they got. But however, that other part is something they didn't get. And I believe that they had too many brains, right? Because I'm the dumbest person in my household. Let me make that clear. I am not the smartest. I've accumulated the most, I've had the most wins from a success perspective. I'm not the smartest person in my household. I am the least intelligent person in my household. I'll say that all day long. These jokers were geniuses. They just had an issue putting things together in their life, and their life just didn't work out with them. So they weren't a student as I was of the things that were happening around them. And so
what's important is, I just want to jump in.
Yeah, go ahead.
How you apply your gifts.
Yes.
You don't have to be the smartest person.
No.
You don't have to come from the right side of town. You don't have to have the best education. But the lessons of Mrs. Peace, that should be a book. You should write that. The lessons of Mrs. Peace, give peace a chance, is you got to make some decisions for your own life early and at each stage of life. And then the second lesson you just said is, life comes down to how you apply your gifts.
Right.
And making sure you actually apply them.
Yes. And so with that being in mind, Jason, you know, when we having this conversation, right, about getting unstuck, you know, change is inevitable, growth is an option. I truly had to make some choices, not just then, even now, right? Because the choices are this, you know, who's packing you, who's the who? And my question is, who's the who to get you unstuck? And one of the things about this conversation is this, we have some different things going on in the marketplace right now, right? We have some different things going on in the marketplace. We're in 2021. We don't really understand what's going on because we've never experienced this. There's nobody known to man who's ever experienced a market, whether it be real estate, whether it be investment, the market that we're going through right now. And so the question becomes, in all of these things, in the lessons of Mrs. Peace, you know, that question of what strategies do you apply in this market? And we've got to take a look at that and moving our businesses forward. I'm gonna flip this back around to you because we had a long conversation, and now because I can't see it, because it's hard to see the picture when you're in the picture. In this market that we're in right now, according to the lessons of Mrs. Peace, what strategies can we apply to this market to make our businesses better?
So the first thing is we have to study this market. So real estate is a cyclical market. And one of the things that, when I hear your story, because like I said, I hear it differently than I think just talking about it. I think you're remembering things that you never really considered or thought about. But your mother had an investment mindset and she studied things, it sounds like, and she thought them through from the beginning to the end. What's the source of the product? And then what's the end? How do I get the product from here to the consumer? That's what she did with the eggs and the potato. We are in a market, and the real estate market always moves up and down, up and down.
Right.
Everyone thinks you make the money up here. You don't. You cash the check up here. You make the money down on the down market. And so for those of you who are new to real estate, you want to study this market. You want to study what they're doing with interest rates. Read the articles. I do a good job, every week of coming on and giving you guys articles. The marketing department passes out, not only the screenshot of the article, but the link to the article. So what I do is I read, since I was 21, like 7 to 9 newspapers every day. And I just pick out the ones I think are of most interest and try and boil it down to 3 or 4 for you guys every week. And so we give you the link to the article. And so right now we are in an up market and people are cashing checks and people are making money, and they're talking about interest rates and what the effective interest rates are. And they're talking about we're having mass movement like we've never had before. So if Mrs. Peace, if this farmer moved and she couldn't get eggs there, what does she do? Stop buying eggs for her boys? No, she starts looking for another source. And so the everyday lesson is study the market you're in, because right now people are cashing a lot of big checks. Why does that matter? Because when it shifts and the market comes down, you want to start, now you get to study that market as to when and where you should be buying. One of the great things we have here at Keller Williams Preferred Properties, as well as you being a real estate agent, is we have a front seat to wealth development. We have a front seat to wealth management. We get to see it raw. We don't have to read it in the books. We get to see people cashing checks, grandmothers who lived in DC who bought a row house back in I took my dad back to his house where he grew up in DC. They paid $3,600 or $3,500 for it when he was a kid. Now those same houses are selling for $1 million plus. And so we get to see families who are selling their houses for unheard of prices because someone had the investment mindset like Mrs. Peace. So what does that mean for us? Everyone, all 600 people in the market center should have an investment mindset and should say, hey, I want to own a piece of property, not just 1, 2. Go ahead.
So when we talk about that strategy, right? So you said have the investment mindset.
Yep. Understand, right? Now we're cashing checks. So we got to study this part of the market, phase of the market, to see what does check cashing look like when we take money off the table. So we understand when it goes down, what the values are, what's the margins on the values.
Okay. So that's that part of the strategy. What's the strategy for us gaining more market share from a listing perspective?
So from a listing perspective, it's having this conversation. See, the lesson of Mrs. Peace is anyone anyone can buy property and invest. No matter how little, if you only make $8.50 an hour, is the maximum you said your mother ever made.
$8. Exactly.
$8.
I said $8.50 and she corrected me and said $8.
Okay, $8. What does that mean? At any level, you can invest. You just have to first have the investment mindset. And so the thing we can do to drive people to do listings and to find listings is, one, we're having the investment mindset. And when you have the investment mindset, there are 2 sides, the buy side and the sell side. Our conversations need to be with people about the sell side. Hey, you bought this property. this many years ago? Have you had, it's served you, you've raised your family. Is now maybe the time to take money off the table, consider your retirement, and shift into something that fits your future needs? That's a big conversation to me that I think a lot of people are sitting on. All the studies and analysis show that there are a lot of people sitting on the sidelines. Each of us knows someone who's raised their family and it's just one or two people in that house. But if they knew what that house was worth in terms of the dollar amount that it's worth and what they could do with the money. So as an example, let's say your mother was sitting on a piece of property and it's now worth $800,000 or $600,000 or $1 million. And you said to her, Mom, you've raised the 4 boys. We're good. You sold the convenience store. Have you ever thought about selling this piece of property and going back to Petersburg, where the houses are $200,000? You get a brand new house for $200,000, and taking that $600,000 and putting it in your IRA or investment account or stock account or buying more investment property. That's what we need to be having the conversation today about. Hey, you've raised all your children. Now you're an empty nester. It's only 2 of y'all. Have you thought about buying a beach house and get a condo at National Harbor and buy a beach house somewhere or up in the mountains?
Right.
We can have these type conversations because there are a lot of Mrs. Pieces out there that own pieces of property. They don't know what it's worth. And have you ever gone back and looked at what that corner of Baltimore is worth now?
You don't want to do that.
Right. You say it again. Why don't you want to do it? Because they got a Starbucks there.
No, not there.
Oh, not there. Oh, we don't want to drive back there. That's not the corner we want to drive to.
No, that ain't Starbucks.
Okay. But my point is, in other areas, there are.
There are. Yeah. And that's real. And so when we start talking about strategies for this market, there's on one end, there's a shortage of inventory.
Yes.
On one end, there's just an abundance of buyers, right? For some of us, we don't know how to get from the place of working with 100 buyers to even working with 2 or 3 sellers. So what strategy do we use to change our mindset to say, hey, I'm flooded with buyers. I've got to get some sellers.
Yep.
What do we do in that space?
So this is an easy, think about it. If you could find listings,
right?
If you could find listings, you could do 2 sides of the same deal. I mean, because the buyers are there all day long.
Right.
I'm convinced that the story is in people's understanding. So as an example, I'll use myself as an example. I've raised my kids. It's just me in a big house. I've decided to sell my house. And I told Emerick, I said, as soon as I sell this house, I said, I'm doing a seminar because I have 40+% of my neighborhood is original owners. And the minute I sell the house, I've already been talking to them. They're going to want to know, what are you doing? I'm like, hey, have you seen the new condos they're building down at National Harbor where you can just look at the water? Have you seen the townhouses? Have you seen some of the other things that you could do with this money? There's no reason for 2 people to be in this size of a house. They weren't built for that. I'm convinced that we can have those conversations. And the answer, one of my neighbors said, well, I heard it's a tight market. What if I can't find a house? I said, hey, I got an idea. You bought this house for nothing. Put the money in the bank and rent something, because you can always find something to rent and then build your dream house down in Georgia or Petersburg or wherever. My point is, getting more listings comes down to one thing: the conversations we're having with people.
And so with that, and so what I'm hearing you say is we probably have to change the conversation that we're having. So the reason why we have so many buyer clients, a lot of us have so many buyer clients because we're having buyer conversations.
We're having buyer conversations.
And that we probably should start having some seller conversation.
So I wasn't thinking about selling my house. I use myself as an example. I came back from vacation and I was just tired. I was like, man, the maintenance on this house. So my neighbors, when they asked why, I said, I started talking about the maintenance, and they all started saying, oh yeah, the maintenance every year, the upkeep, having, the thing. Now, mind you, nobody in the neighborhood's cutting their own lawn. So it's not like, it's just calling the person and overseeing the person who's cutting the lawn is a drag. But nonetheless, you have to find their pain point or their pleasure point.
Right.
And so when I started mentioning, well, what about living on the water? Oh, that'd be nice. What about living downtown? Ooh, that'd be nice. What about, and you start talking about what you can do with the money that's trapped. You got to remember, these houses are costing people money. And if they live in a house this big and they could get by with a house and be happy in a house that's smaller, that's completely brand new or renovated, that's a big difference. A lot of people are coming up on retirement. That's a big difference. Like, where do you want to live with telecommuting? They can live anywhere in the country. Maybe they want to go back to Petersburg. Maybe they want to go back to Carolina or wherever they're from and take that money. But it has to be the conversations. And if we're not having conversations every single day about their life, and it really is using their Ford script. Ford script is family, occupation, recreation, dreams. Hey, how's your family doing? Oh, all your kids are in college and grown? Great, got it. How's your job? Now you can telework. Oh, and you only got 2 or 3 years left till you retire. Got it. What do you like to do for? Oh, you like to golf and sail, and your wife likes to, golf too. Let me ask you this question. How has the pandemic and how has your children now being away changed your dreams? I got friends, Emerick included. He's dating his wife every week, every night. Him and Robin are out at a different restaurant. They're enjoying life. And I got other friends that the kids are gone, they're free and they're dating again, like high school and college. So what are your dreams now? Do you still want to come home and cut this big yard or oversee this big house? And once I'm starting to have those conversations, people are starting to say, nah, I could be in a condo looking, I hadn't really thought about the National Harbor. I hadn't really thought about living in DC or going back to Charleston. That's where it is. It's in that Ford script, getting to know people and seeing seeing what's going on in their mind.
And so you have this other thing with this strategy about this market where even in talking to sellers, what about people don't want to leave? They're not empty nesters, right? However, they've been living in this house for 5, 10 years. Pandemics got them. They spend too much time home. They don't like the house as much as they did when they bought it. It's like, this was a great house 5 years ago. Or as a matter of fact, some people say this is a great house post-pandemic, pre-pandemic. Now that I've been in here for a year, I don't really like this house as much. And so we start talking about a strategy in this market. I believe that one of the things we have to do is we have to start identifying the people who may be uncomfortable in the place that they are right now. And so one of the things that I would say for a strategy there is we have to take a look. And so many times, so many of us, we keep looking for the big sale. We want to go to the 4-bedroom, 3-bath house. I'm gonna flip this around for you for a second. How about, and I want y'all to write this down. How about you find a neighborhood where there are 3-bedroom houses? They have a lot of 1.5 and 2-bath houses in that neighborhood. These people have been in this house for at least 10 years. I'm willing to bet you there are a lot of people in those situations that are ready to move. And the reason being is pandemic has held them up in that house, and they understand that house is really too small for them. Some of them are just chomping at the bit. They have their own master bedroom bath or owner's bedroom bath because they're tired of sharing a bathroom with their kids. Some husbands and wives, they're tired of sharing the bathroom. Just take a look at it. There's a demographic there of people who are sick and tired of their home and say, I want to move up. Are we identifying those people in that strategy? The other part, there's the flip side of it. There's some people like Jason who lives in a pretty good sized house. The house is
It's
too
not as
big.
big as yours. It's not as big as yours. Let's be honest.
Okay,
It fit in your basement.
we're not talking about me. We,
Go ahead. I'm sorry. That's a joke going back 20 some years. Never mind.
and so yeah, because I'm the gardener, right? So then we have the people who have this house and it's too much house. They don't go in the basement. They don't use half the rooms in the house. They just have to understand that it's time for them to move on, because that house that was the trophy, that was a status symbol, for some reason, the things that matter to you when you're in your 30s and your 40s, they don't matter as much to you when you're in your late 50s and 60s. So you're starting to look at the maintenance, like Jason was saying, you're looking at cutting the grass, and now you're in your late 50s, 60s, and 70s. You're looking to simplify your life. You understand that less is better and less is really more. So those are the people that we have to start identifying in a market like this, because they want to move. Nobody has just had the right conversation with them about moving to help them realize that it's time for them to move on.
I've been talking to people with the 10-year rule.
Right.
And the 10-year rule works both ways, depending, regardless of where you are in the market. And so let me give you a couple examples. The 10-year rule is multiply everything times 10 years. So I asked my neighbors as I was talking to them, I said, one of the reasons I'm moving is, the maintenance every year on this house because of its size. Somewhere along the line, I end up spending at the very least $4,000, but it could be 8 to 10 grand a year. Like last year, I had to replace one of my HVAC units. So I'm generally spending about 6 to 8 grand a year just on maintenance to the house, and the house is in great condition. But if I multiply that by 10, that's $60,000 to $80,000 that I'm going to spend on a house that's just me in the house. What can I do if I convert that into a condo and I get rid of that maintenance?
Right.
In terms of the cost and just the energy. The other end of the market is this. I just read read something about Houston. The prices in Houston went up 19% in the last year, 19.9%. And the prices here, I don't have the figures right in front of me. The Houston was the last number, but it's somewhere between 12 and I think it's 12.9% or 14%. And so the 10-year thing is, and the lesson from Mrs. Peace is, if I stay in this apartment or if I stay in this smaller house, how much farther away from my dream will I be if I don't pull the trigger in 2021? Because housing prices are going up. There isn't enough supply. We have if magically tomorrow we had an additional 1.5 million brand new houses nationwide, magically built by elves overnight, we would just be meeting the demand. Everyone thinks the market's going to crash. It isn't going to crash. It's just going to cool, but it's going to cool at a higher price point because there just isn't enough inventory out there or capacity for new builds. And so they're not building quick enough at this pace. They're not going to have built enough for the current demand for 7 years. And as you know, the demand's going to keep rising because we have this new generation that's going to suddenly come in. And so where am I going with this? It's the conversation. We have people who are on the fence, and we got to move those people from our conversations off the fence, and we got to quantify for them what they're really doing sitting still. Hey, you're sitting still and you're at the 30 years old with the 1 or 2 kids, or 32, 34. You're just delaying your ability to get to your dreams.
Right.
And your kids play in the yard. You're 50, 55, 60. You're keeping this house. The kids are never coming home. Or even worse, they do come home. Either way, you should sell this house.
Well, see, that's why you downsize, because you don't have a place for them to come back to.
You don't want no place for them to come back to. But that's also a conversation. Our problem is we're not having conversations. That's our problem. If everybody looked in their Rolodex and divided everyone up into, hey, who can I have a conversation? Who's near retirement? Who's getting married? Who just had a baby? Who's thinking about getting divorced? Who has an investment mindset that I know? Who would be open to conversations? It's just introducing and having the conversation.
Right. And so when we start talking about this, we talking about the conversations, we talking about having an investment mindset. We're talking about uh, introducing the idea, the conversation about move up. Had the conversation about move down. And so with all these different strategies of this market, that's great, fine and dandy. But however, most people won't move in this market. Most people are not going to have these conversations by themselves in this market, which brings us to a different conversation when we start talking about, which was question number 2 on my list, who's the who, right?
What
And
do
I
you
say
mean?
this, who's the who to help you grow your business? Because in that growth, in that with change is inevitable, growth is an option. And in that space of growing your business, there has to be a who to walk with you to grow your business. And that who typically is not someone who already exists in your life. One of the things that we have to think about, particularly in this growth phase, is and we start talking about who's the who's your coach, who's your mentor, who's your accountability partner, who's your new team member, who's your new business partner, who's your new client. And so the question in your business growth, that second question, who's the who to help you grow your business? One of the things, Jason, like I was thinking about this, one of the biggest things and one of the things that's helped me so much, and I didn't really understand this in my West Baltimore journey, is I really, really, really had a ton of mentors, right? And I didn't even know that they were my mentors. I did not know they were my mentors. And I had to do a mental playback, right? And when I did a mental playback, right, I looked at it from a mentor perspective. And that mentor perspective was this. The question was, okay, I go to church. There's a male pastor, good person, had great conversation. Then there's Mr. Gaither, my neighbor across the street, great mentor. He's a gentleman, washes his car, cuts his grass, fine, upstanding citizen. There's a mentor. Every summer, I would go back to Petersburg to stay with my aunt and my uncle Maurice. Great man, great person, great human being, great mentor. If I go through, I'm just going through high school at this point because I wasn't thinking about this in elementary school. But however, I did have an elementary school teacher in the 6th grade, and I actually called him probably about 4 years ago and thanked him for slapping my head up against the backboard for acting stupid one day because it shocked me out of some stuff. But in any way, Mr. English, I didn't have a mentor, but I saw this male role model figure. In junior high, I couldn't really say that much, except us I did Mr. Baden, my workshop teacher, and I had a mentor, right? Then I go to high school. I had a high school, and I had this one instructor. I was in data processing. I was learning COBOL and RPG.
Oh, wow.
I had this instructor. This was 1982. Remember, report program generator, source decks, like punch cards kind of stuff. And so his name was Mr. Luckett. And Mr. Luckett would always talk to me about my career opportunities, all the different things. Matter of fact, Mr. Luckett was the person that got me interested in electronics. My point being is that I had a mentor all through my life, and I didn't even realize it until I had to do a mental playback. And what I'm saying to everybody here is that the who's the who, it could just be a mentor that you pour into or that pours into you, and they don't even know that they're pouring into you. You're just watching their every move.
And
So
it could be one of the things I always one of the things I noticed, because for years I would, when we'd have agents, they'd be here 2 years, 3 years, not cap, just kind of their business was down here, and then boom, they would just be like in our top 5, top 10. And I'd always make a point to go see them and ask the question, well, what changed this year? And there were always 3 lessons that they taught me, 3 things that each one, and they didn't know I was going to see them. It was random when I would catch them, just to congratulate them and just to see where their mindset was. The very first thing was that all of them said is, I just made a decision that I was going to change what I was doing. I wasn't getting the result based on what I was doing. The second thing they did is they started digging into who they hung around with and just what Emerick's talking about, mentorship. So they found a mentor in the market center at KWPP that was farther down the road, and not formally, not like, hey, they went up and said, hey, will you be my mentor? Because we didn't have our coaching program back then, and KW didn't have MAPS coaching. They just said, hey, I'm trying to build my business. What advice can you give me? And they would always keep asking questions. And whenever they capped, they would always thank that person. And so they surrounded themselves with mentors, and they surrounded themselves with like-minded people who were looking for the exact same thing, but more than just talking, they were walking. The world is full of two types of people, talkers and walkers.
You mean walkie-talkies?
And walkie-talkies, and these were walkers. And then, so the first one was they made a decision. The second one was they started looking for mentorship and people around them to be part of their core group to run.
Right.
And then the third one is they just started doing the stuff that they had. I said, well, did you go to a class or something special? They said, no, I've been to 5 million classes. I just started applying the stuff that I had already been taught. And I was like, well, you didn't understand it. And they, in honesty, they would say, it wasn't that I didn't understand it. It wasn't that the red book, the MREA is wrong. It isn't that Ignite doesn't work. It isn't that Bold doesn't work. It doesn't work if I don't do it. I just started doing it rather than trying to figure it out, waiting for something magical to happen. And it's just like the Nike commercial, just do it. And
Right.
so in this case, you're asking, what can we do for listings? Just start having the conversations. Just do it with
Right.
as many people as you can, based on, if you see a woman pregnant, she's going to have a baby. Let's talk. If someone mentions that there's kids who graduated from high school or going to college, you talk about empty nest. They say, I'm coming up on retirement. You start talking about that, thinking about a divorce. You start talking about where they're going, what their goals are, what they're trying to do, what their dreams are, and how, and then relate it back to real estate. I just had someone who retired, and they sold their house and are building a new house and building a beach house as well with the profit that they made from the house they sold. They bought 20 some years ago. Have a story for the person.
And the challenge was, you never talked to them about real estate, did you?
I myself?
Yeah.
In the past, no, but
You
now
didn't talk to them, and you didn't talk to them until they started telling you about all the deals they were doing, right?
that's it. Yeah. I just had, I think I mentioned it on one of our town hall meetings.
Right.
I just had like $2.3 million worth of listings. This person had an investment property in DC, and they're selling their current house. And by the time I got to talking to them about it, they already had all that. They already had someone taking care of it. I had someone pass away. Their mother passed away. And while I was down consoling them, I never thought to ask, is there a way that I can help them in terms of the mother had a bunch of property. So yeah, there's opportunity. We're just not having the conversations.
Right. So with the name of the game is have more conversations. And then when we start with the other part is thinking about who's the who. That's mentoring and looking at people. Coaching. So many people look at coaching as the wrong thing. Well, why do I have to pay somebody to talk to them? Well, I look at coaching like this. If you have one or two choices, either you pay somebody to talk to them to help you produce results, or you pay nobody to help you produce no results. At the end of the day, you're investing in something. Either you're investing in donut dust or you're investing in the future profitability of your business. So in that space of coaching, coaching is an investment either way. And we have to look at coaching different. We have to look at coaching from a perspective of coaching is really about finding the right person to help you self-discover and finding the right person to have that dialogue with you to help you get unstuck. So many of us, a lot of us, we in this place. We're in this place where we're not doing bad. We're making money. The question is, are we making as much money as we could be making? And the answer is no, because if you could be making more money, you would be making more money. And the reason why I say the answer is no is because if you could do it by yourself, you would have already done it.
Coaching is for, I have a slightly different take on coaching, or unique,
Okay.
which is I pay for coaching because it's a shortcut. I don't want to take the amount of time it's going to take me to figure it out.
Right.
I want somebody who will help me jump the line, help me get there faster.
Right.
And so that's the first way I think about it.
Okay. I like that. I like the way you think. I like the way you think.
Shortcut. Like if they aren't helping you get there quicker, then you either have the wrong coach or you didn't explain it to them. But that's why I'm paying you is to.
Or you could be Emerick and they call you uncoachable.
That is true. Emerick is uncoachable. But so that's the first thing. The second thing is Emerick and I have had gone back and forth for about 15 years on who authored this statement. I am certain he stole it from me, but he keeps saying I stole it from him. But good advice doesn't cost, it pays. If you are getting good advice and you have to pay $1 for it or $100 or even $1,000, you should be tracking a return on that because good advice continually pays.
Stop right there, Jason. And I want us to think about this as real estate professionals, right? Think about this for a second. We sell real estate and people pay us. They don't pay us to sell their house for real. They pay us for the advice we give them to help them sell their house. So it's kind of sort of puts us in a difficult place. We're willing to charge somebody to listen to us, tell them how to sell their house. However, we're not willing to pay someone to tell us how to grow our business. Does that wrap your brain around that? So we're in a conflict. We're in a business, a personal conflict and quandary, because here's the deal. You're willing to do something. You're not willing to do something that you're willing to do someone else to pay to do for you. Just wrap your brain around that for a second. So they can get their house sold faster because they list their house with you. You can speed your success journey up a lot more if you get a coach and you listen to the coach. What's the difference?
I had a conversation once with one of our agents, who was a young agent. Okay. They were single mother, and they were saying, hey, I can't, my career isn't doing that well. I'm not selling. And I can't seem to convince young people to buy houses. And that's who I primarily know. Okay. And I think she was 24 to 26. And I said, okay, well, let me ask you a question. Where do you live? She said, I live at home with my mother. I said, as long as you live at home with your mother, you're never going to sell any real estate. There's an old Zig Ziglar story where he didn't become the millionaire salesperson until he actually bought the product. I said, you can't convince your friends that real estate is a pathway out when they see you living at home with your mother. You have to buy a place. So she went and bought a place, and boom, her real estate career blossomed. We have to start being, as Emerick says, we can't have these internal conflicts. You pay us for advice, but you don't want to pay for advice. Otherwise, we're going to get caught in that. The other thing is the reason people are paying you, because right now someone could say to you, well, I can sell this house myself in this market. But the reason you're paying us as a professional real estate is for the shortcut. I'm going to get you the money faster, quicker, easier, and the most money. It's my expertise.
Amount of money and the least amount of time with the least amount of aggravation.
That's it. And so we have to look at it and to wrap it back to Miss Yvonne Peace. We have to have an investment mindset. If you are out there and you don't have any seeds in the ground, you haven't invested anything, then when it comes time to harvest, you're not going to have any harvest. And this is really simple. If you've ever been to a farm, it's really simple. There's something that in farming communities they say is don't eat your seed. You can't eat all your seed. Corn is seed. You can't eat all the corn. Wheat there's seed in it, so you can't, eat all the wheat and make it bread. you have to take some of the seed and put it back in the ground if you want something to grow. That's what investing, that's what Mrs. Peace did when she bought the little convenience store. That's what she did when she moved her boys to the apartment above the convenience store where she owned the building. That was taking some of her seed and putting it back in the ground. I'm certain that there were people she worked with at the curtain rod factory. First off, I didn't even know they had curtain rod factories. So just that takes me back to an era of America where everything was manufactured here, and there's a curtain rod factory. Of course there is, just like there's a curtain factory. But we have to invest. And that's also the story of Emerick. He could have just been a mega agent with a team, but he decided he wanted to do a brokerage. He could have just been an airman, a retired airman from the Air Force. But at each point in time, there's a decision that says, I want to be more, I want to achieve more, I want to impact more people's lives.
Let's make this clear. Let's make this clear. I would not have been a retired airman from the Air Force. That retirement check is not enough. Let's make that clear.
What's the retirement check on that?
I don't even want to tell you.
Okay.
You would be upset if I spent 20 years and you know what that retirement check was.
Oh, wow.
You'd be upset. See, I wasn't like David. David was like a senior NCO. I was too busy selling real estate. Right. And so I wasn't.
Dave has big money.
Yeah, Dave's got the big money. I was too busy selling real estate. So I wasn't worried about getting promoted. As long as they left me alone and I could sell real estate, I could make all the money I wanted to make.
It worked out for both of y'all.
Oh, it really did. And so, but Jason, like we talked about who's the who. We talked about mentors. We talked about coaching. But the other part, what we didn't talk about, who's the who to help you get to that another, is your peer group, right?
Yes.
So what peer group are you running in? You know, who's the person that's in your circle that's most like you, that's willing to run the most like you, then that can keep you inspired and then, in fact, hold you accountable to some degree. And so we got mentors, we have coaches, we have peer group. So, you know, for me, my peer group was always people outside of my immediate circle. They weren't even people in my brokerage. There were people outside of my brokerage. And the reason why they were people outside of my brokerage is because I wasn't afraid to talk to other people outside of my immediate space, one. And number two, I was always looking for the cream of the crop. Not to say my brokerage didn't have the cream of the crop, but the cream of the crop of people who I thought that I wanted to hang around enough on a professional level to help me get to a different place. And so, you know, your peer group, who is in your peer group?
One of the things that successful people always note, I'm big on biographies. Almost all of them were mocked by their peers. So when Matthew McConaughey was elected sexiest man in the world, they interviewed him and said, a man in high school, he goes, I couldn't get a date in high school. Like nobody would date me. Pierce Brosnan, former James Bond, he's like, nobody was dating me. They made fun of me my entire childhood because of my Irish accent. The list goes, whoever you pick, and you think, wow, they must have really, things which really lined up for them. What you find is at each point in time, they were unpopular. They were making decisions that were against what the average people do. And so one of the lessons of Mrs. Peace was she looked around, and it's easy to be drinking and smoking around drinkers and smokers. That's part of the party. But it's hard to be the one that says, nah, I don't do that. I'm going to spend my time over here reading. I'm going to spend my time going to this class. I'm going to spend my time talking to these people outside of my normal, my normal circle.
Right.
Because that's where my business is going to come from. That's where my family's future is going to be. I have to move. You have to move in the direction that you want to end up. You can't sit still. So and using Mrs. Peace as an example, you can't sit in the room with drinking and smoking and expect anything else to come out of that besides drinking and smoking. Because people say, hey, well, why you want to open up your own store?
Right.
What do you know about stores?
All right, this 2021. And some of y'all older, some of y'all younger. You can't sit in the room with a bunch of weed smokers and not get a contact, okay?
Oh my gosh. That's true. That's a way to update it.
You can't sit in the room with a bunch of weed smokers and not get a contact. So you probably should just leave the room. How about that?
You can get it, but you got to develop it. And here's the other thing is you don't know where people are going to end up. So you got to talk to everybody. I assure you that when I met Emerick, I didn't know we'd be sitting here 16, 17 years later. And I darn for sure didn't know he'd have that super nice purple sport coat on that I'm jealous
hold up, dude.
about.
This is not purple.
What color is on my screen? It looks purple.
Okay, you need.
I like it.
That's because you have that old iPad update.
Oh,
this is blue.
Oh, okay.
This is a medium blue. Okay.
Okay. Well, there you go. See, I was liking it because I'm like,
I'm too big to be Barney. Okay.
I thought you were wearing it in honor of Prince's passing or something.
No, I'm too big.
Hey, thank you. No, it never says it looks purple to them too. So hey, it's a very nice color purple. That's why I was like, hey, you get that. Okay.
There we go. And
but here's the thing, you don't know who you're talking to, where they're going to end up. So you better make sure and talk to them, because I'm certain when you were a sergeant and an airman, they didn't know you'd end up here. People don't.
You know what? Some people did, Jason, because I talked to a guy, right? I talked to
everybody says that when you're successful.
Exactly.
They say, oh yeah, I always knew you were gonna make it.
But this dude was real. He said, you know, it was always something different about you. And he said, I always knew that something different was going to happen for you, because you always had you always were inspired at a different level. When we played basketball, they knew that I was going to play basketball, and then I was going to leave, and I was going to sell some real estate. And they would all sit up under the tree, drink beer, do whatever they're going to do, and I was gone. And so sometimes you just know, some people just know that something different is going to happen. Well, I didn't know what was going to happen for him was going to happen for him either. I just didn't. And just to what you said, because he was one of them dudes, we all hung out, we went and played, they hung out. He wasn't that dude to like just settle down. We fast forward years later, he went from that dude that's hanging out. He was the flight steward on Air Force One with President Obama, with George Bush and President Obama. Then he went to work at the White House with President Obama. Then he went to work in civilian life with President Obama. So this dude, I said, man, we were talking today. I said, dude, you probably never planned this out. And then he just said, good people like good people. That's the reason why we talking right now. Because he asked one of our other boys, said, I haven't talked to him in a while. Give me his number. I want to call him so we can catch up. And so like you said, you just never know who's going to end up where. So now this dude, his everyday conversation, his everyday hangout is with the Obamas.
You never know.
That ain't a bad social circle.
That ain't a bad social circle right there. People will invest in you.
Right.
Your gift will make room for you. The Bible says your gift will make room for you before kings,
right,
and queens. And so, but we got to put our gift out there. We got to put our gift out there. You can't be a secret agent. You can't be a lonely agent. You have a message, and the world is buying the message. So if you ain't talking to them now about the message, people don't want to talk about real estate. They do want to talk about wealth building. That's one of the topics. That's my topic tomorrow on my business mastermind, is on the wealth formula. Everybody wants to talk about the wealth formula. Nobody wanted to own a Keller Williams 17 years ago. Today, that's an easy sell because there's success. The same thing is true for each of you. In the beginning, you got to find people who believe in your dream and who will sit and listen to you as you describe what it is you're trying to build and what you're doing with it. And if you just have a simple conversation, because part of this conversation is wealth, is if your conversation is just, I'm just here to buy and sell, help people buy and sell real estate, that's not going to be that attractive. If your conversation is, hey, I'm here to build wealth and I'm using real estate as a mechanism to do that, that becomes more attractive to people, because regardless of what they're doing, everyone wants to build wealth. And we have a front row seat to building wealth. And that's the thing that I want everybody to walk away from this with. And it's whether you're Mrs. Peace with $8 an hour, you can still build wealth. There's ability to build wealth at each stage of the game. It's just the conversation we're having with people that allows it.
Well, Jason, one of the things, in this kind of, and changing of inevitable growth is an option, in that space of growth, right? How do you create that breakthrough moment, particularly in a market like this? And it's what's in it with everything that's transferring in the market right now, how do we create that breakthrough moment in our business?
You want the truth?
Yeah.
The truth is, you got nothing to give, nothing left to give. If you want to make the breakthrough, my experience, having analyzed, watched, and participated in all these people doing business,
Right.
is the person who wins isn't the smartest person. The person who wins isn't the one with the most resources. The person who wins is the person who's going to get the job done and go to exhaustion.
What?
And figure it out. What that means is, if our business right now today is built on meeting people, getting listings and calling, then you literally call till you're exhausted. That's what the game is.
And that's interesting that you said that, right?
And it don't cost nothing. It's passion.
Right.
It's commitment.
And when you said that, right, that's the interesting part, because I said it earlier. I wasn't the smartest person in my house. I was the least smartest person in my house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right. I wasn't the most skilled. However, when I had to take a look at it, I was consistent. And what the consistency, for me throughout my business has been, the willingness to keep going no matter how tired I was. I had a conversation with your brother one time, right?
Which one?
JR.
Okay.
Oh yeah, and so he said, man, you work day and you work night. I said, it's mind over matter. He said, what do you mean it's mind over matter? I said, if you don't mind, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And so we have to do that. But the key to that breakthrough moment is consistency. And the reality for most of us is that we won't be consistent enough to allow the breakthrough to manifest itself in a way such that it takes us through quantum leaps in our business and in our life. We'll work consistently enough until we have small, minor successes that show up in the form of mediocre, I'm going to call it mediocre profit.
Short money, that's what I call it.
Short money.
People get happy with short money.
And the short money don't take you the long distance.
No. That's why it's short money.
Right? Or quick money. Sometimes we just have to, in that mindset, in that moment, what's gonna take you to that quantum leap in your business is consistency, right? It's gonna take a change in mindset. You're gonna absolutely have to have the who in your life, because the who is gonna support you in all of your endeavors to help tell you when you're being I was getting ready to say something. When you're being less intelligent, okay, I'm just gonna say it. When you're being a dumbass, right? The who's gonna tell you that when you're being dumb, when you're being stupid, when you're not doing what you're supposed to be. The who is gonna tell you that. And then it comes back to that other idea of the how, the what. You got to have that investment mentality, right? Because in order for you to be consistent, consistency, when you first start anything, it doesn't pay off initially. The consistency and the mastering of the task, the mastering of the event, the mastering of the business, that's when it starts to pay off. So you're making that investment in the beginning because you understand the dividends at the end, the true payoff and your goal and in your destination.
That's true. The one thing, the commitment to get it done is what makes the difference. At the time when Emerick had come with this idea, my then wife said, well, a lot of people come to the ideas, why this one? Why are you investing in this one? And nobody knew who Keller Williams was. So there was no brand awareness.
Right.
And I said, if anyone will get it done, Emerick will figure it out. I bet on the person. I used to tell people this all the time. If I had a Harvard and Yale MBA, I'd bet a nickel on Emerick. I'd bet all my money on Emerick every day and twice on Sunday. And here's why. If I told Emerick that there's going to be a nickel under my doormat every single day, he'd knock on the door at 5 a.m. to make sure he beat people there. And he'd say, hey, I brought you a cup of coffee. How's your day going? We talk for 5 or 10 minutes. He goes, I'm going to get that nickel right quick. And he'd get the nickel and he'd go next morning before anyone else. It's the consistency. He's committed to his craft. And the one thing, I know we only have a minute or two left, that I want to leave you guys with, it's the same lesson that Mrs. Peace had. It's the same lesson Emerick has. It's the lesson of Keller Williams Preferred Property is. You have to be committed to your craft and committed to your success. And in that commitment is an investment of time, money, resources, and focus. And that's what separates us from everyone else. And that's what's going to make your business excel. And if you're looking for the tactical part of it, it's the conversations. If you aren't having 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 conversations a day, everywhere you go, picking up on whatever they're talking about, then you're just not going to succeed in the way you want to. And so I'm encouraging everyone to make that commitment today, to be the person in their family that changes the future of how people see your family and what's possible. Then I turn it back to you, Mr. Peace.
So, in this conversation today, this is a different conversation. However, it's a required conversation because in conquering 2021, one of the big things that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to make more of an investment. We're going to have to make more of an investment in ourselves. We're going to have to make more of an investment in our business. The other part is we're going to have to change our dialogue. We have to change our conversation. We're going to have these investment conversations. We're going to have this conversation with people about taking them to positive present. We're going to have these conversations with people about understanding that where you are right now is where you were 10 years ago. And where you'll be 10 years from now is determined by the choice you make today, whether you decide to stay where you are. And so we have to have that conversation. Then on the other end, we have to get the who's the who in our life, whether it's a mentor, whether it's a coach, whether it's a peer partner or whether it's just an outside training source or a training group or a training program that's going to pour something different into you than what you already have. And then what's going to change that? What's going to be that jolt that's going to change your life or change the trajectory of your business to make you have that breakthrough? That's going to come through consistency. The question is, are we consistently doing the things that we're supposed to do in a way such that it will get us the desired results or goals that we wish to achieve? And so when we start talking about this thing about, change is inevitable, growth is an option, we have to change the way we look at things, and the things that we look at will change. With that being said, where are you growing to?
That's a great statement
about this. Where you're growing to is going to require a who. I cannot say that enough. It's going to require a who. And it's going to be a who that's probably not currently in your life. And so what I want to ask you, and I'm going to leave you with this, who's the who that's going to help you change the trajectory of growth in your life, business-wise and personal-wise? Who's the who? And if you can't say who's the who right now, your job right now is to go out and find the who that's going to help you change the trajectory of your life from a personal perspective and a business perspective. Because the future is now.
That's
And
true.
if you're not working in the now, you're not working towards your future. So, what's our questions? Let's talk for a minute. Y'all want to talk for a minute? It's 6:02. You know, if you want to talk, we can talk. If you don't want to talk, we can unplug. So, what's the conversation? Anybody want to talk? We want to talk about this thing? What'd you get out of this? Was this a good session for you guys? Was this beneficial?
Yes, yes.
Excellent.
And so what's the thing? Roderick, I know you're sitting over there. Did y'all play Skelly and Philly, Roderick?
No, we actually called it tops.
Oh, y'all called it tops.
We called it tops.
You knew you had them 13 blocks.
Exactly.
You had them 13 blocks drawn in the middle of the street with some chalk.
Right. And we'd put some clay in that top and go to town. Exactly.
There we go. See that? I knew another city boy would understand that.
Exactly, man. You walk around, you know, get the juice top or the mayonnaise top, get some clay in there, and go to town, man. That's
There
it.
we go. See that?
I laughed when you said that because that you was spot on, man. You was spot on, you know.
And life was simple. Life was simple. Life was simple. You were
Indeed.
happy with those were your toys. There was no Xbox. There was no Nintendo. That was our Xbox and Nintendo.
And let me. I'm gonna go a little deeper
Right.
and use your words. I'm gonna be real transparent. Besides the tops, I would break the spokes in an umbrella and use it and twist it around and walk around my neighborhood acting like I was in a helicopter. You know what I mean? I mean, listen, you had tops. I use a helicopter with. Yeah, exactly, right?
So, I don't want to bore everybody, but when you're in the city, it's like a little different. And this is just conversation. People don't know nothing about racing popsicle sticks.
Right.
I don't know if y'all did this in Philly, but you race popsicles in the rain. You go out play in the rain, go get a popsicle stick and race the popsicle sticks down the gutter. Drop them at the top of the hill.
Right down the side of the gutter. We did that, Emerick. No doubt about it. No doubt about it. I just want to. I'll add this one piece.
Okay.
This one piece. Since we're talking about having those conversations around a wealth building. So one of the things I did, you know, out of school early, is like you know part of like what your mom say. You know, she didn't drink and smoke. And so what I did to build my portfolio is every birthday I started at 25. I purchased a house. I bought a house every April. And so I think around that space, when you want to talk about having conversations, it's easy because that's what allowed me to grow my business, because I would buy a house I never drank, I never smoked. I'd buy a house. And so I would tell that to my friends, and then, you know, they want to do the same thing, and then so on and so on. But for the folks on this call, I mean, it's a simple process, like you guys said. You know, you got to own what you're buying. If you don't own the bricks, you cannot stay in business. So you have to buy that house. And every birthday, I didn't have parties. You didn't have big fancy cars until now, right? But but I just buy a house, and it was easy, and it was an automatic thing that I did. And to one of the other points that you guys made, the goal is always to be competitive and outwork everybody on your team. And you know, I mean, these are simple formulas that you guys brought up and talk about. And I like to add my piece with just buy a house for your birthday, like not a cake, not a party. Buy me a house. I mean, listen, a lot of times we give a party at a banquet hall. That's 10 grand. Take that 10 grand, go buy the house. Right. And just every year you do the same thing, and then give that legacy to your kids, your nieces, your nephews. Like every birthday, in our communities, when you talk about buying the block, you should be buying a block every birthday. You should be having a party in the new house that you just acquired. And then that creates the sustainability, the wealth that you so desperately need and want in our urban communities, man. It's a simple thing. And so here's the thing. I got Section 8 tenants who have a Cadillac Escalade, right? Can't pay me the $30 rent, and The Comcast bill is $300 because they got Comcast in every room. And so when you change that mindset, you gotta own that house. It's a simple thing. It's a simple. And I'll say one other story. I had a really nice tenant probably 10, 15 years ago, and she was giving me a hard way to go. And I said to her, I says, listen, let me find you a house. Because one of the things I did back then, I sold a lot of Fannie Mae foreclosure properties, right? So real quick, this house was 30 grand, Emerick. And it was her, she had like 4 kids. She was going through an abusive thing with a boyfriend. And the house was in West Philly. And I said, listen, why don't you buy this house? It's 30 grand. I'll set you up with, the mortgage and everything. She said no. I brought that house because it aggravated me so much. That house now has been cash flowing for me for the past 13 years. And I mean, I'm getting calls every day from investors, they offer me 200 grand for that same $30,000 property that I brought probably 13 years ago. And so when you look at the dynamic, there's no reason why everybody on this call shouldn't be like, it's an easy thing. You got to buy a house for your birthday. Like it's no simpler present that you should want besides a house for your birthday. It's a simple thing. You owe it to yourself. I'll yield the floor back to you, Emerick.
No, Rod, and that's a great way for us to start taking a look at things, because the truth is we absolutely have to buy what we're selling. We have to buy what we're selling. And the other end of that is, does our audio match our video?
Right.
Is your audio and your video matching? And when they don't match, right, everything around you begins to talk to you in a different way.
Absolutely.
Sure. You're not.
And sometimes we don't know why we can't get ahead. Part of it, we can't get ahead because our audio and our video don't match, and the story is not consistent. And we're running around in conflict on a regular, consistent basis. And
the other thing, when you talk about mentors, you don't need, look, Keller Williams provide all of the tools, being purposeful, the motivational stuff. Like we can't be in this company, in this environment, and not using the roadmap that's been provided to the folks on this call. It's simple. And then one of the things you got, as leadership, you have to have that conversation with your folks and say, besides the check, why are you here? Like, what's your goal when you talk about the wealth building? And Jason said it, we want folks to list with us. We want folks to buy with us, but we're not listing and buying our own inventory. I mean, it's a very, very simple thing. We overcomplicate it. And listen, and to go really deep, right?
Right.
When we talk about Black Lives Matter, let's not have a watered down conversation. Let's talk about creating the tax base so that we can really get policemen and legislators in those positions to advocate for us at a supremely high level. We missing a conversation. Listen, we have 20 folks on TV talking about the superficial stuff. Let's talk about the real essence of creating that financial stability in our community so that so when these white boys come in and do something crazy, we can get them out because we have the economic power to drive them out and of those neighborhoods. And then, right, start through attrition, buying the houses and the land in those neighborhoods and really push them out. So that Black Lives Matter conversation at a supremely high level needs to add a parallel conversation about ownership and economic stability at a super, super high level. And I challenge everybody on this call to take the ownership and starting to buy this land so that we can really fortify those conversations, with the folks who don't really want to hear it, and talking about the folks in white America. So, it's what we got to do. It's a simple ask for yourself, right? So we can't ask Congress and white America to give us something, that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in 1969 said you got to do for yourself. It's a simple situation. Just go get it. Right. Like you ain't got to have the Christian Louboutins and the this or that, but just buy a house. It's a simple thing to do once a year for yourself.
There we go. So, this is deep. And again, we're going to keep bringing the heat different ways. There's different conversations. At the end of the day, it's about us coming out on the other end of this conversation a better person. And so with that, thank you guys for being here. I trust that you got something great out of this conversation. It moved your needle positively. The question is, change is inevitable. Growth is an option. How are you going to grow? What's more important? Who's the who that you're going to incorporate in your life to help you grow? If you haven't found them, you better start looking, because you can't do it by yourself. If you could do it by yourself, it would already be done.
Be done.
That being said, thank you, Mr. Fenwick. I appreciate you.
Thank you,
Roderick.
Mr.
Always a pleasure with them.
Hey, we need to have one with Roderick on. Roderick, you need
to tell you,
get interviewed to talk about that, and then the mechanics of that.
Okay, I'm around whenever Emerick calls. I'm around, Jason. Definitely. You guys are dynamic.
And when we have them on, we need to have all the stakeholders invite their clients to hear about how Roderick did it. That's how we drive business.
Absolutely.
So thank you guys for tuning in.
Thank you, gentlemen.
You got it. Take care.
All the guests. Hey, E. Helms, you there? You just got me looking like, acting like you paying attention. See? Now I'm gonna call him on his cell phone and say, we gone. You can hang up now.
Hey.
Guys, see you next week.
Thank you, guys.
Bye now.
All right.